Okay.
I'm Zav Rustomjee. I'm an independent consultant. In the last few years, I was involved in the electricity distribution industry restructuring process. And I think there are major parallels between what happened in that restructuring process and the current debate around water service provision, wherein there's been a proposal that one of the ways in which to accelerate and address water service provision, or the lack of, is to consider a constitutional amendment. This process was tried in the electricity distribution industry restructuring process. That involved essentially a policy that the state was trying to follow, which I think it adopted in 1998, to amalgamate the distribution infrastructure that was managed by ESCOM and the distribution infrastructure that was managed by 187 individual electricity license holders, distribution license holders, being the municipalities, into 6 regional distributors. The main argument around that was around economies of scale, and some of those arguments would prevail in the debate around water service infrastructure. And I've pointed to the need to try to understand the trajectory of the electricity distribution industry restructuring process and its parallels and lessons for the current discussions around how to address and accelerate water service distribution service provision. In the case of electricity distribution industry, it got to the point where the cooperative governance approach was tried but didn't work. And the proponents of restructuring the electricity distribution industry then went for a constitutional amendment, which gathered quite a considerable amount of support, but it was defeated in the parliamentary process, I think around 2010. And the point that I've made is we're now sitting in 2014. It was defeated, and the argument was that the current processes that were underway to reform and address electricity distribution industry backlogs needed to be given more time to play themselves out. Well, 4 years later, the backlogs that exist in electricity distribution have actually increased, and there is no evidence, in my view, to suggest that any of the current processes are likely to work. In the case of electricity, you have an additional institution which I don't think you have in the case of water, which is the electricity regulator. The regulator has been attempting to obtain information from municipalities around the cost of electricity supply, and they have difficulty because they have absolutely no power to extract that information. And I think that the real challenge in water services is complex. There are a range of very difficult and long-term reform processes that are underway, reforming local government, administration, capacity building. On the financing side, there's a long-term process of reforming the system of local government financing. And all of these are processes which will take decades to resolve. And so those that argue against the constitutional amendment to accelerate this are essentially saying we must wait for those processes to play out before we are likely to see a meaningful improvement in water service delivery. And so my argument is that we should equally consider a constitutional amendment, because it's a tool which could be made to work with all of its implications for constitutional change.
Thank you.